welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is Brewing with Underwhelming Commanders, episode 23. And before I get to the decks, let me just briefly, for some of my newer viewers, go over this a little bit. I have been doing this for a while now. I initiated this whole series way back in April of last year. So the idea of this whole series is there is a poll. You guys make suggestions. I put those suggestions in the poll, and then you go vote for the next video. The top 3 vote getters will get discussed on the next video. The number 1 vote getter gets an actual deck list, right? So for anyone who's new to this series or new to my channel, there will be a poll in the description below for you to go vote for the next video to see what commanders will be there. So for this video, the number 3 vote getter this week was Moritte of the Frost. And this is a really interesting one. I sort of broke with tradition here a little bit. I have actually done Moritte on my channel already. This will be the first time I'm discussing a commander more than once on my channel. However, I think it's warranted for 2 reasons. I mean, 3 reasons essentially, because someone asked for it. So I put it in the poll and it came in number 3. So that's one reason. The second reason is I can't believe how unpopular it is. I mean, I know this series is called Underwhelming Commanders, but a lot of times I will also do unpopular commanders, commanders that you just never see, because I think maybe people don't know what to do with them. I'm not sure. I don't think this is an underwhelming commander. Certainly is an unpopular one. It only has about 300 decks on EDH Rec right now. I'm shocked because when I first saw this, I thought it was busted. There's just so many things you can do with it. I mean, let's just look at it here. 2 a green and 2 blue. Shapeshifter 00 is a snow creature and has Changeling. You may have Moritte of the Frost enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and snow in addition to its other types. And if it's a creature, it enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it and has Changeling. I mean, there's just so much going on there. Plus you have a clone in the command zone. That in itself is huge. Plus you get the snow, you get the counters. There's so much, the Changeling, right? There's just so many different ways you can go with this. I went with the traditional Lord approach where I put just a lot of Lord effects in the original deck I did, but I just thought there was so many different ways to go with it. I thought I would go some different approaches. You could even just go with like a Biovisionary. I want to clone my Biovisionary. You know, that could be the win con in your Moritte deck. Your Moritte can make 1 clone of the Biovisionary, and then you just need a couple more and you can win the game, right? There's lots of different ways to go here, but a really interesting way you could go with this is by not cloning creatures at all, right? You don't have to clone a creature here. You get to clone any permanent. So I thought, why not clone a land? That's a very interesting approach to go with Moritte. And I know people are always looking to me for interesting ideas, so this is an interesting one. So let's throw some lands out here like Darksteel Citadel and Tango Pool Bridge. Artifact lands, which doesn't really fit the theme of what we're doing, but the more important thing is they're going to be indestructible. So our commander can copy these lands and will be indestructible. That's the important part here, right? Cascading Cataracts, also an indestructible land that we can copy. And Lotus Field is a land that has hexproof that we can copy, giving our commander hexproof or indestructible, which is really important. But then what are we going to do with it? And I was sort of inspired by this idea from Avalanche Caller. 1 and a blue human wizard, 1/3. Pay 2 mana, target snowland you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with hexproof and haste until end of turn. It's still a land. Remember, all the lands that we copy will be snowlands because our commander is going to be a snow permanent. No matter what he turns into, he's going to be snow. So that Moritte of the Frost comes down, makes a copy of our Darksteel Citadel. So we have a snow Darksteel Citadel, which we can then turn into a 4/4 creature. It's going to be hexproof, indestructible, and haste, and a 4/4. I think that's pretty good. We can use the Awaken mechanic here as well. That works really good with this scenario, right? I know people are asking, okay, we copy a land with our commander, then what do we do? It's sort of a Voltron strategy, right? We can put some counters on our commander so that when it attacks, it's a lot bigger. It's still going to continue to be a land though, which is important, right? Sylvan Advocate is going to give your land creatures +2/+2 as long as you have 6 or more lands. And Halimere Tidecaller is going to give your land creatures flying. I think this is a doable strategy. I really do. Teferi's Response is a particularly interesting one. 1 and a blue instant. Counter target spell or an ability opponent controls that targets a land you control. If a permanent's ability is countered this way, destroy that permanent and then draw 2 cards. I mean, this is a really fantastic spell. First of all, it's 2 mana to draw 2 cards. That's pretty darn good. The only problem is you can't cast it unless you're countering an ability that targets a land you control, but your commander is going to be a land, so guaranteed at some point your opponents are going to want to target it. The biggest bonus to doing this strategy, though, I think, is you can use lots of effects that return all non-land permanents to owner's hand. Your commander is a land. Even when it's a creature, if we turn it into a creature, it's still a land and a creature. So any effect like Coastal Breach or Devastation Tide is going to not return our commander, right? It's going to be almost like a one-sided board wipe for us. Or maybe like a Dune Blast, that's probably a better comparison. Crush of Tentacles will also do this. Oblivion Stone also works this way, where it's going to hit all non-land permanents, so it won't hit our commander. And Embargo is a really interesting one. 3 and a blue enchantment. Non-land permanents don't untap during their controller's untap step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life. So that means everyone else's creatures won't be untapping here, but our commander will, because our commander is a land that we're turning into a creature. I just think this is a very interesting strategy here. Whatever strategy you go with Moritte, though, I think there's a few cards that work particularly well with it, like Unesh and Gargos, particularly because they reduce the cost of our commander, right? Unesh will reduce it by 2, Gargos will reduce it by 4, so if we have to cast it again, it'll reduce that commander tax. They're just good cards, right? Unesh is going to give us that mini factor fiction when it enters the battlefield. Gargos has that ability whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell, Gargos fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, so that's a nice little added bonus to help protect our commander as well. No matter what direction we go, I really like Mere Reservoir with Moritte. 3 mana artifact, tap, add 2 to your mana pool. Spend this only to cast mirror spells. So our commander, again, is a mirror. Regardless of whether we turn into a land or not, while it's on the stack, it will have Changeling, and it will be a mirror, right? Changeling applies no matter what zone that card is in. So this is 2 mana to cast our commander. Also, we can pay 3 and tap, return target mirror card from our graveyard to owner's hand. So if our commander dies in the graveyard, again, it has Changeling, so it's going to be a mirror card, and we can return it to our hand with this. And Reflections of Littjara as well. 4 and a blue enchantment. As Reflections of Littjara enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. And again, we can choose any creature type here, right? Our commander is all creature types while it's on the stack, right? While we're casting it. So we can just pick something else that maybe we want to copy. And whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. Now, the reason this works particularly good with our commander is because we can have our commander enter the battlefield as different things. We cast our commander, we create a copy of that spell. A copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So the copy, we have it enter as something else, right? It's not going to be a legendary creature named Moritte. It's going to be a legendary permanent that's named Darksteel Citadel. And then the other Moritte that we have comes into play as a copy of something else, right? So the legendary rule isn't going to hurt us here because legendary only cares about same names, right? So this is just an auto include, I think, with any Moritte deck. I think this is just a fantastic commander. There's so many different ways to go with it. I'm shocked it's not more popular. I threw out a really interesting idea for you guys to run with there. There is so much more. I can't believe this guy doesn't get more love. I promise after this, I'll stop bringing it up. So we're moving on to the second commander this time, and it is Bontu the Glorified. This was a really surprising one. Again, this was another situation where I checked after the first day and Bontu was nowhere to be found, but then all the Bontu fans or the maybe Mono Black fans came out on the second day and it just skyrocketed up into second place. So 2 and a black, God, 4/6, Menace and Indestructible. And it's always really nice to have Indestructible on your commander, hexproof, anything like that just makes it really hard to get your commander off the table. Bontu the Glorified can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. Okay, so some limitations there for sure, but you can pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature, scry 1, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So obviously we're in sort of an aristocrats theme here. You probably want to be sacrificing your own creatures a lot. Anything that cares about dying obviously is going to work here. The morbid mechanic works fantastic here, like Reaper from the Abyss or Skursdag High Priest. We're going to be getting that trigger almost assuredly on our turn. Might get it on other players' turns as well, but those cards are going to be great in any deck where you're going to be guaranteed getting dice triggers all the time. We're going to want lots of stuff that we can be sacrificing, right? Sengir Autocrat and Carrion are 2 of my personal favorites. Sengir Autocrat just gives you 3/01 Black Surf creature tokens when it enters the battlefield, so that's essentially 4 creatures that you can use for sack fodder. Carrion is going to sacrifice a creature, right? It's a 1 black instant, and when you sacrifice that creature, you create X 01 black insect creature tokens, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. So that gives us a whole slew of those tokens that we can use to sacrifice for our commander or various other effects. Ayara, First of the Lochthwain, is also going to work great here. She's basically doing a lot of the same stuff. When we create all those tokens, as soon as they enter the battlefield, each opponent's going to lose 1 life and gain 1 life. So that, again, works. Similar theme to what our commander's doing here. Also, we have a sack outlet, right? You tap and sacrifice another black creature to draw a card. Just a perfect fit with Bontu, I think. Nadir, again, another deck where I think he's a great fit, because whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, you put a counter on him, and we're going to be probably in more of a token theme, I think, with Bontu. It's a lot easier to get those dice triggers and the sacking with tokens, so that's going to load up Nadir, and then when he leaves the battlefield, we get a number of 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens equal to his power, so he basically replaces all those tokens that we had before. Warlock class also works great here. 1 black mana enchantment at the beginning of your end step. If a creature died this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. So that's a pretty fantastic fit. Also at level 2, we can look at the top 3 cards of our library and put one of them in our hand and the rest into our graveyard. Sure, why not? Level 3, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they've lost this turn. So that's going to be great. We are probably going to have lots of drain effects in this deck. Our commander essentially has that Blood Artist type effect on it, so that's going to double it up. I really like Titan Hunter in this deck. This is a card that I saw a few people talking about when Ikoria came out, and man, I don't even think I've ever seen it in a game. I don't know if anyone plays it. 4 and a black human warrior 4/5. At the beginning of each player's end step, if no creatures died this turn, Titan Hunter deals 4 damage to that player. So this is going to be hurting our opponents, not going to be hurting us at all, right? 4 damage, that's not nothing. That's pretty significant. We can also pay 1 and a black and sacrifice a creature to gain 4 life, so it's also a sack outlet. As I've said many times before, if your deck is gaining life at all, I think Witch of the Moors is just an auto include, right? Because at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. How perfect is that with our commander, right? We sacrifice a creature, and now it doesn't have to be a token. Now it can be anything. We're going to scry 1. Each opponent loses 1 life, but we also gain a life. That's it. We just gain 1 life. That's plenty. That's all we need to trigger our Witch of the Moors. So on our end step, each of our opponents have to sacrifice a creature, and then that creature we just sacrificed, we can pick back up again. I also really like Tavash Gloom Summoner with Bontu for similar reasons, right? At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, you may pay X, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. If you do, create an XX black demon creature token with flying. So we're going to gain that 1 life from our commander's ability, and then on our end step, we're going to make a 1/1 black demon token, more sack fodder, right? I just think that's a perfect fit with Bontu. And with all the sacking we're doing, I recommend trying out Hecatomb. I really like this card. I have it in a deck of mine that is very similar. I've tried to make it work in a lot of decks. It is just such a wild and crazy card. 1 black enchantment. When Hecatomb enters the battlefield, sacrifice 4 creatures you control, or sacrifice Hecatomb. So that's a high price, right? You got to make sure you got lots of little creatures lying around, and this deck you probably will. The payoff though, you can tap an untapped swamp you control to deal 1 damage to any target. That's really good, right? All your swamps become pingers. So this card could probably fit in a few different decks, though I think it's particularly good in a mono black deck because you're guaranteed to have a lot of swamps lying around, right? If you put this in a 2 or even 3 color deck, it's just not going to have as big of a payoff. In this deck, I think it'll work perfectly because you have all those creatures that you can sacrifice to it, and then once it's in play, you got a lot of swamps lying around that you can throw damage around with. I think it's a really fun, interesting fit to do with a Bontu the Glorified. And again, you know, what's the win con for this deck? I mean, our commander is 4/6 menace indestructible. We can attack with it. Maybe you can throw some equipment on it and load it up a little bit if you want to. Don't have to worry so much about it getting removed. It is only 3 mana. That's pretty cheap to get going with the damage on your commander. And then, of course, the drain effects, right? You're going to have a bunch of drain effects as well. So that's Bontu the Glorified, but coming in at number 1 this week. And as usual, whenever I have a mono white commander, it just seems to crush it. And Masako the Humorless won by quite a large margin, which, you know, is fitting given it's from Champions of Kamigawa, and where, you know, everyone has that Kamigawa buzz in the air right now, so I think that's fitting. 2 and a white, Human Advisor 2/1. Has flash, and tapped creatures you control can block as though they were untapped. That is a very unique ability. In fact, it's the only card in the game that has that ability. But what do you do with it, right? And the first thing is our commander has flash, so I think we want to put a lot of flash creatures in here. Cemetery Protector's a great one. Alms Collector. Celestial Crusader is another great one. Set's Tiger, another personal favorite of mine. It's always fun to put cards like this in a deck and having those really awesome gotcha moments. I particularly like the Set's Tiger when someone has like a Crater Hoof effect or some sort of overrun effect that they think they got you with, and then you give yourself protection from green. But we're not just going to fill this deck with flash creatures. We got to use our commander's ability because that is a really great ability. And the first thing we can do is we can be tapping our own creatures because we don't have to worry about them not being able to block, right? So Devout Chaplain's a great one. We can tap it and 2 untapped humans we control to exile target artifact or enchantment. This is going to be a very human-heavy deck, right? Our commander's a human. We're going to have a bunch more. We're going to be using this ability a lot. We can use it on our opponent's turn, but we can use it on our turn as well. And then our creatures are up for blocking. Hand of Justice is another really old, interesting card. 5 and a white. Avatar 2/6. Tap it and 3 untapped white creatures you control to destroy target creature. We're going to have lots of creatures. There's 36 creatures in this deck on top of some of the tokens we're making. And of course, they're all white, so that's not going to be a restriction at all. How about we tap that Order of White Clay? It has one of those not often seen untap abilities. We tap it with our Hand of Justice, and then we can pay 1 white and untap it to return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So that's going to be a lot of creatures in this deck. Our commander is a 3 or less, so that'll return our commander to play as well. God-Favored General and Stony Brook Schoolmaster are both creatures that want to be tapped, and they're going to be making those tokens that I was talking about that we can then use for other tap effects, like Collective Effort, for example, 1 white sorcery, and has Escalate, tap an untapped creature you control, right? So this is going to be one of those things that we're going to be tapping our creatures with, and as we escalate, we can choose 1 or more destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. That's always usable. Destroy target enchantment. That's always going to be usable in a commander game. And putting a +1/+1 counter on our team, of course, is going to be fantastic because this is more than likely going to be an aggro strategy where we're just closing out the game by doing damage. We can also use Devout Invocation the same way. 6 and a white sorcery. Tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battle for each creature tapped this way. So that's going to be a great way to close out the game. Dragon Scale General is going to be a perfect fit here. 3 and a white human war at the beginning of your end step. Bolster X, where X is the number of tapped creatures you control. So again, we sort of want our creatures to be tapped, right? So that we can get this effect. This is going to load up our team. And of course, Throne of the God Pharaoh is just an absolute perfect fit here. Again, really going to speed up closing out the game because at the beginning of our end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures we control. This typically is a huge downside, having to tap your whole team on your turn and leaving yourself open to attack like that. But we're good because we can block with our tapped creatures, right? This bad boy is going to drain our opponents really fast. Of course, we have to put some of those infamous, tap down type effects like Crackdown in this deck. It's not going to hurt us anyway, but it's going to hurt our opponents. I think it's an auto include. I think Arena of the Ancients. This is a deck where I've been wanting to try this card out for a while, and I think it's a good fit here. 3 mana artifact. Legendary creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps, and when it enters the battlefield, you tap all legendary creatures. So this is a situation where we really don't care if our commander's tap. The ability is still going to be there, and we can still block with our commander if we really want to. So I think that's going to fit in what we're doing, and obviously it's going to hurt our opponents probably quite a bit. Some more interesting creatures that we can tap on our turn to increase the amount of tapped creatures we have. Witch Hunter is another interesting old card. 2 white human cleric. You can tap it to deal a damage to target player or planeswalker. But also you can pay 1 white and tap return target creature an opponent controls to owner's hand. That's pretty darn good. Preacher is another really old, interesting card. 1 white human cleric. 1/1. You may choose not to untap Preacher during your untap step. Tap. Gain control of target creature of an opponent's choice that they control for as long as Preacher remains tapped. So again, very off-color theme here where we have a white card gaining control of opponent's creatures. They get to choose, but still a fun, interesting card that fits in this deck. And you always got to have a backup for your commander, and I think Reveille Squad is a perfect one. 2 white human Human Rebel 3/3. Whenever one or more creatures attack you, if Reveille Squad is untapped, you may untap all creatures you control. So this is a nice backup where, we tap down our whole team on our turn, and our opponent is like, aha, I'm going to kill your commander, and then I can attack you and you don't have any blockers. As long as our Reveille Squad is on the board and is untapped, when they attack us, all of our creatures will untap so that they can block and we're not going to get blown out. So I think it's a great fit here. And again, another commander that I was not super excited about making a deck with. But then I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, we can do some flash creatures. A lot of really interesting gotcha cards in this deck. We can do the tap theme. We can do a mono white, I want to tap down my creatures theme. And I did a lot of that in here as well. I think I turned out a pretty good deck here. The deck list for Masako the Humorless is in the description below. Feel free to check it out if you want to. And also, as I mentioned, the poll for the next Underwhelming Commanders video is in the description below as well. Go there and vote and we'll see which commander gets a deck in the next episode. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.